Oddly enough, Kit, last time you guest hosted with me, we did a segment about Cori Bush losing in polls to her AIPAC-funded primary challenger. And it just so happens, with Kit back here again, another story came up. Jamaal Bowman trails rival George Latimer by 17 points, according to a new poll. This is a write-up in the New York Post. Far left squad member, obviously keep in mind this is the editorial bent of the New York Post. Well, to the New York Post, anybody to the left of Mitt Romney is, Castro, right?
Right.
Far left squad representative Jamaal Bowman is in deep trouble in his bid for a third term in the House of Representatives. In a shocking new poll obtained exclusively by the Post on Wednesday, Westchester County Executive George Latimer leads Bowman 52-35 among Democratic primary voters in the 16th Congressional District, which takes in southern Westchester and parts of the Northeast Bronx. Among Democrats who voted in at least 3 of the last 4 primaries, Latimer's lead grows to 21 percentage points, 56-35, according to the survey. Now, this is where you put an asterisk next to these numbers. According to this survey conducted by veteran Democratic pollster Mark Mellman for the pro-Latimer Democratic Majority for Israel PAC. So this was a polling outfit hired by DMFI, which obviously is massively biased in Latimer's favor. Among Democrats who say they know both Latimer and Bowman, 76% of the primary electorate, Latimer's lead expands even further to 26 points, 60-34. A major problem for Bowman is that Latimer has a far better image among voters than the incumbent, who has been damaged by his self-inflicted actions and rhetoric, like pulling the fire alarm. The job performance of Latimer, 70, who has held various offices in Westchester since the late 1980s, is viewed positively by 68% of Democrats in the district, while only 18% view him negatively. In comparison, only 36% of respondents had a positive view of Bowman's work in Congress, while 55% have a negative view. Latimer does 32 points better on the positive side, while Bowman's negatives are a massive 37 points higher than Latimer's, Mellman said. The poll also finds that more than 6 in 10 Democratic primary voters in the 16th district want the U.S. to support Israel in the ongoing Middle East war, while a majority, 59%, approve of President Biden's handling of the crisis. The data are clear. With a robust campaign, the well-known and highly regarded Latimer is in a strong position to unseat the now unpopular Bowman, Mellman said. The Bowman camp dismissed the poll as junk in response to the dire numbers. So it is true that this poll was conducted by basically a pro-Latimer PAC, which does reflect a certain slant, obviously. And I guarantee you, the way they phrase that question, do you support Israel in the Middle East war? I guarantee you they framed it the way a sleazebag Zionist would. Do you like Israel or do you support the terrorists, right? They must have framed it in some way. Yeah. However, I do think that while the results of this poll are almost certainly exaggerated, I don't think, based on the size of the lead and the demographic makeup of the 16th congressional district, that Bowman is actually leading. I do think overall he is probably losing, probably not by 17 points, but probably by the high single digits, maybe 8 or 9 points. This poll, this outfit also has a very low credibility rating according to the aggregators of all the different polls. So It's probably exaggerated, but given the makeup of Westchester County, given Bowman's lousy record, not only with the centrists, but with real progressives as well, given his lack of fight, and obviously given the fact that AIPAC seemed to play it pretty smart here. They picked a beloved figure in Westchester to run against him. So it's not like there's an unknown guy who is challenging him. This is a Westchester County executive. He's 70 years old. He's well-liked in the area. Here is the makeup of the 16th district. Now, Kit, you're not a New Yorker, but right in the heart of that district, Scarsdale, that's one of the wealthiest towns in New York State.
Oh, really?
So it's actually kind of a miracle that Jamaal Bowman won this seat to begin with when you look at the map of the district there. Scarsdale, Rye, Harrison, New Rochelle, White Plains, Dobbs Ferry, parts of Tarrytown. These are very, very wealthy, shit-lib Democrat strongholds. The only reason Bowman won is because he ran up the margins in the southern part of the district, where you could see there in the lower left corner of the district, Yonkers, and you could see the tiny little, I guess, I don't know, peninsula that juts out. That is a tiny portion of the North Bronx. Now, there are a significant number of people there, so that's where Bowman ran up the margins to win the first time. But this is overall a pretty hostile district to an anti-Zionist or anti-Israel Democrat. Combined with his antics and the fact that he has no base left, I think it is fair to assume that he is trailing, which would, if the election were held today, it's almost certain Cori Bush would lose. And I think, despite the bias of that poll, it's almost certain that Jamaal Bowman would lose too. So it looks like AIPAC is pretty close to successfully picking off at least 2 squad members this cycle. What do you think?
Well, it doesn't come as a surprise that the Democrats, especially the squad. Hold on, wait, correction. Air quote, the squad, because they're not really a squad. Right. They're going to lose 2 members. It makes no difference to me whatsoever. But if we look at the bigger picture, remember how Jamaal Bowman also got in? It was the height of the George Floyd protests, which, again, you probably had some shit libs, especially some rich shit libs, who were probably saying, oh, we got to support Black Lives Matter because we don't want to look bad amongst our neighbors or something of that nature.
Well, if you remember Elliot Engel, the incumbent, too, he was caught on a hot mic saying the only reason I'm speaking out about racial justice issues is because of George Floyd. That's the only reason I have to do this. So he really embarrassed himself on that key issue right ahead. Like, that was like a week before the primary too.
Yes, exactly. And looking at Jamaal Bowman's record, he never followed through with any of his promises. And even when, I think it was Colin Radix Carter who covered I think it was last year of INN, when they covered a squad fundraiser, Jamaal Bowman's there looking busy, looking at his watch. He's not even listening to any of the constituents. He's only in there just because he can help fundraise and bring in more money. Jamaal Bowman and the squad have only cared about securing and sheep herding people into the Democratic Party to stop Republicans from doing what they've been doing for years, and that is still implementing right-wing laws. So I'm not surprised that Bowman is losing voters, because he never had follow through. He never believed in any of his messaging whatsoever. He probably ran for office thinking it would be a quick, easy gig, make some money, and assumed that he would guilt people into voting for him over and over again so he could be another one of these decade-long politicians that delivers nothing to the table. So New Yorkers get rid of him. And plus, on top of that, too, good friend of the show, Roger Meadows, he recently confronted Jamaal Bowman. And Jamaal Bowman, on a hot mic in front of everybody, said, hey, you shouldn't approach me like this. Do a meeting. How dare you talk to me like this, in this manner, talking down to a voter, a constituent, and someone who has, in the past, given us a lot of messaging and updates and about worker co-ops and citizen ballot initiatives. Roger Meadows has his finger on the pulse of what's happening with all these worker co-ops and citizen ballot initiatives. And here you have Jamaal Bowman telling a voter how he really feels. Don't approach me like this. I'm holier than thou. And at the same time, too, Bowman also suffers from Trump derangement syndrome. And so he's not offering anything critical to the dialogue in Washington, D.C. He is just another politician who jumped on a good brand, which was the Justice Democrats, which is now completely evaporated.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that's all exactly right. And, this is the trap that these progressives, whether they call themselves squad members or not, doesn't really matter at this point. But this is the trap that they walked into over the past few years, which is they didn't cause enough trouble to satisfy the base of progressive activists who put them there. But they did cause just enough trouble for AIPAC to want them gone anyway. So it's this impossible in-between zone, right? Like, they pissed off AIPAC to the point where AIPAC wants them gone, but they didn't piss off the powers that be enough to the point where their progressive base is going to have their back when the AIPAC lobby actually comes for them. And so unless you have broad support within your district the way like a Rashida Tlaib does, or unless you are a fundraising juggernaut the way AOC probably is now with her giant name ID, it is going to be tough to fend off some of these challengers. It looks like Cori Bush is going to lose. I think smart money now is that Jamaal Bowman will lose. Ilhan Omar might very well lose. People forget about this, but she almost lost her last primary over crime. She came within single digits of losing that. So you could be down 3 squad members come next year. And that's just a lesson in how not to represent the movement that put you there. I remember Shama Sawant said at one point when she was elected to the Seattle City Council, she did the bidding of the people who sent her there. She used that office the way an activist would, and she had an extremely loyal following. And because she had that extremely loyal following, her movement had her back when the Democratic Party and Jeff Bezos and fucking, Starbucks came after her and tried to recall her. She beat back that recall because she doubled down on why she was sent there, to the point where she had a very, very competent and precise and committed and passionate following behind her. So when they came for her, she beat them. These squad members don't have the same thing. They don't have a legitimate base of diehard support anymore. And if you're Jamaal Bowman, and you're absolutely right, I think what was a really big factor in putting him over the top in 2020 was that those richer areas in northern Westchester County, despite the fact that they are hardly progressive strongholds, I think there was enough white guilt, quite frankly, in the aftermath of George Floyd to put him over the top, in addition to the pretty strong showing he had in Yonkers and in the North Bronx. Because also 2020 was a moment that was before Force the Vote, right? That was before they really showed that they weren't serious, right? So you still had a little bit of goodwill left in the tank in that year. Whereas now, 3 years outside of the Force the Vote thing, now you have AIPAC pouring in huge loads of money against you. It's going to be really tough. It's going to be a very heavy lift.
If I could add in just one more thing here too, the squad was always probably destined for failure anyways, because look at how Justice Democrats, specifically just Justice Democrats, were set up. Because I know Bowman was a Justice Democrat, as was AOC and all these other people who call themselves a squad. It was always designed for failure, because look at the architects who created Justice Democrats: Cenk Uygur, Kyle Kulinski. You also had a few other activists and organizers. And the thing about the Justice Democrats is they never had a contract with these politicians, these candidates that were running, in order to keep them accountable to their quote unquote values. It was, we're going to get you into Washington, D.C., and you're going to be on your own in the wilderness. There was never a backup or infrastructure plan necessary to make sure that, I don't know, hypothetically, this is a hypothetical scenario. We know how everything played out, to maybe prevent AOC from, or other the squad members from, being bullied or co-opted by the Democratic Party or having them fall in line. There was nothing ever planned ahead. And then when Cenk Uygur and Kyle Kulinski were kicked out of Justice Democrats lost a huge media arm. This is before Hardlands or DueDissidence or even Jimmy Dore's show really took off or became this new wave of media landscape. So even then, the Justice Democrats' progressive movement to reform the Democratic Party was on its way for failure way early on. And now we are seeing how everything is just gone. DSA voted to be made in a wing of the Democratic Party.
Right.
Justice Democrats losing voters, losing supporters and donations. Same thing like Brand New Congress and Our Revolution. And AOC, Bernie, Bowman, all these squad members, all these quote unquote progressive Democrats, whatever remains of that great coalition started in 2016 and to some extent 2020 is now gone. Why should anyone waste their hard-earned time, money, and energy on people that were never serious to begin with and never had a plan? There was never a plan. It was just pissing in the wind for these people.
Please clap.